Welcome to Better Than Ever Alive, wherever you're watching or wherever you're listening. Hope you're making today your masterpiece. In today's show, we're going to talk about a class of medications and supplements you might not have heard of, but you will, I promise, called Senolytics, and what their role might be in the aging process. My name is Dr. David Geier, double board certified orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist, and media medical expert. I help you feel and perform your best regardless of age, injury, or medical history. And as always, I say it every time, and I still mean it. In this show, I'm not giving you medical advice. This is meant for general information and educational purposes only. If you have comments or questions about any of the studies we talk about going along, definitely put those in the chat. Remember, I can't see the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, but if you put it in the chat, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, or the chat in YouTube, I do get to see those. I will try to put those on the screen and answer them or share them. Also, remember, if you have medical questions, I will be here Friday for Ask Dr. Geier Live, and that's where I do all of those. But I'd love to know who you are and where you're located so we can talk more about that. Jamie, it's good to see you. Again, if you have questions about Senolytics, hold those maybe, or you can put them at the end, but I'll discuss those at the end. That's a topic I'm really interested in. But before we get to Senolytics, I want to talk about something else that might help you live long. And if you're a Star Trek fan, is it Star Trek? Live long and prosper? I was never into that kind of stuff, so I don't really know. But we're going to talk about eternal youth and what potentially might help prevent aging and keep you healthier as you live longer. This is a study that was published in the Journal of Physiology. Researchers at the University of Copenhagen basically looked at older adults, and they wanted to see the role that physical activity played and what effect it had on their muscles as they got older, and potentially in terms of the development of stem cells. They studied 46 older men, average age of 73, and put them into three categories. Basically, ones that were sedentary when they were younger, or the ones that are more younger but they're sedentary, then older ones that were active throughout life. Exercised when they were young, exercised when they were older, and then elderly males who were still sedentary. And the ones that were active in their elderly years, again, 70s, maybe early 80s, they did things like weightlifting, racket sports, swimming, cycling, golf, running, rowing, that kind of thing. What those people had, the elderly people that stayed physically active, especially the ones that started active, had higher numbers of muscle stem cells in their bodies, what are called satellite cells, that play a big role in regenerating our muscle, in growing muscle, and protecting our nerves against breakdown as we get older. All of which are big problems as we get older. We know sarcopenia is a big problem as we get older, where the muscle is just basically generalized muscle wasting. We get cognitive decline, we get nerve degeneration and nerve problems, all sort of things that typically occur as degenerative processes as we get older. And so the more physical exercise we get, the more our muscles are going to stay strong. But one of the ways they stay strong is, apparently according to this study, is creating these new stem cells, which are good for all of this. Mary coming to us from sunny California. It is really sunny here today in Charleston too, so we have that in common. I love Southern California. I think she's Southern California. And yes, Star Trek. You know, I've actually never seen an episode of the Star Trek show, and I only saw one of the movies because they played it in my physics class at the end of the year in high school biology. You know, they played movies to pass time. Star Trek was never my thing, so I feel, I don't know if I should be embarrassed about that or not. I've seen all the Star Wars. Well, I've seen most of the Star Wars movies, but not Star Trek, for what that's worth. We got one from Hungary. Very exciting. Andrea coming from Budapest. It's got to be late that time. All right, I want to talk about one. Speaking of late, I want to talk about a problem that a lot of people have, and that's drinking coffee too late in the day and what you can do about it. I bet we've all been here in this day of Starbucks and the coffee shops and people drinking coffee and having coffee shop meetings and things like that. We've all been there. You end up having a cup of coffee later in the day and you're like, uh-oh, is this going to interfere with my sleep? And the problem with having coffee later in the afternoon or even at night is it takes time for our bodies to get rid of that caffeine. Caffeine's got a half-life of between 6 and 8 hours. Essentially what that means, if you have a cup of coffee at 2 p.m. and it's got a half-life of 8 hours, half of it is still in your system 8 hours later at 10 p.m. I promise you, your sleep will not be good. Either you'll struggle falling asleep or you'll wake up a lot. So what do we do if, oops, all right, we had a caffeinated beverage, coffee, too late in the day? And I have cut way back on coffee, and if I do have, in fact, I actually had a third cup of coffee today. I actually felt kind of guilty about it, but it was all before 7 or all before 8 a.m., so I'm hoping it won't affect my sleep tonight. But here, this study is really interesting. It talks about a way that you might get rid of that caffeine quicker. Very, very easy. It's called broccoli. That's right. A study published in the journal Current Drug Metabolism found that broccoli induces, for those of you biology fans out there, you know that it induces enzymes in the liver called the cytochrome P450 enzymes, which are involved in metabolization of medications and supplements, and in this case, caffeine. So by inducing those enzymes, it causes your body to get rid of it faster. It's not just broccoli, even though that's probably the best example. It can be any cruciferous vegetables, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflowers, watercress, radishes. All might help us metabolize that caffeine a little bit quicker. I love broccoli, so that's the one I'm going to stick with. I have been known to eat an entire bag of broccoli in one sitting. I put it in an air fryer, olive oil on it, and some seasoning. Absolutely love it, which I probably need to vary up my vegetables a little bit. But for what that's worth, that may be pretty good. Not too late, 11 p.m. in Hungary. Yeah, that definitely a little later than here, but glad you were joining us this late. All right, I want to talk about something else that I am very excited about. I have this, in fact, I'm just about to finish it, this small jar of a certain brand of matcha tea. And it was, I say this not as an endorsement. They didn't send it to me. It's nothing like that. But I got it through something else I was doing. It's Breakaway Matcha, and I love it. I don't drink it all that often, but it's green tea, but to me it feels like it's green tea fortified, so to speak. I really enjoy it. But looking, and we're talking a lot about longevity today, let's talk about matcha tea, what it is, and how it compares to green tea, because both have become very popular and both likely for health reasons. And a lot of times people sort of use matcha tea and green tea interchangeably, and it makes sense because they're very much the same thing, but with a little bit of a difference. So they do come from the same plant. The difference in matcha tea and green tea is how they're processed. Green tea, the tea leaves are heated and then they're dried. Matcha, those same tea leaves are crushed into a powder, and then that's used to make matcha tea. That was my only thing with the Breakaway Matcha. Sometimes it clumps at the bottom, especially if you don't drink it when it's really hot, at least in my experience, but I still loved it. But because the matcha tea includes the entire tea leaf, it has a much higher caffeine content. Now, in terms of longevity, what's interesting about both of these is they're full of antioxidants, specifically what are called catechins, which are very, very antioxidant. And the main catechin is one I've talked about on this show before, epigallocatechin, or EGCGs. We've talked about it with arthritis, but they're good for your heart, they're good for your brain, they're antiviral, they're thought to be anti-cancer. They are very, very anti-inflammatory. Cardioprotective properties, they promote DNA repair. And matcha tea, because it's got the entire tea leaf, seems like it has more of that EGCG. In fact, in this study, it had 3 times as much EGCGs as most normal green tea, again, because it uses the entire tea leaf. Now, one of the things I tell my arthritis patients, if we talk about an EGCG supplement, is that green tea is great, but there isn't that much epigallocatechin in it. So a lot of times that might be something you might consider doing as a supplement. I do that every day. This is not medical advice. I'm not telling you to do it, but I am a big fan. I take it every morning. The one we have is a decaf version, but I have a couple patients that say even when they take it at night, being decaf, it still keeps them up at night. So even if it says decaf, maybe take it in the morning. But big fan of epigallocatechins. Green tea or matcha tea if you like it. Big fan. All right, and then let's talk about a final study before we move into our main topic, but this pertains to the main topic. It's a study about Senolytics. It was a study out of the Mayo Clinic, and what they found is that these senolytic drugs that they gave both they did it in mice, were able to get rid of what are called senescent cells. This Mayo Clinic study was published in eBiomedicine, And what they found is that by getting rid of senescent cells by these senolytic medications, it significantly raised the production of a protective protein called alpha-klotho. And real quickly, we're going to talk about this a little bit more with senolytics, but cellular senescence is something that you need to know about. You're going to hear a lot about this in the coming years. These are cells that go into sort of a zombie state where they're not functional. Cells throughout the body and different tissues and things, they're not functional, but they basically forget to die. So they're hanging around in this dysfunctional state, but they're releasing all these inflammatory cytokines that are making the cells around them senescent, so spreading the disease, but also those pro-inflammatory cytokines are causing tissue destruction and inflammation, not just in that area, but throughout the body. It's one of the hallmarks of aging. And so what science and anti-aging one of the things it's really focused on lately is ways to get rid of not just the formation of senescent cells, but getting rid of them. That might help us live longer, might help us be healthier, improve our health span by reducing our risk of age-related diseases. And so, again, it's trying to get rid of senescent cells, but getting rid of them, clearing them out before they pump out what are called senescence-associated secretory phenotypes. All those bad, basically chemicals, chemical mediators, chemokines, inflammatory cytokines that are damaging other cells and damaging our tissues throughout the body. There's research going on everywhere about senolytics. But this study, what it found is that protein, alpha-klotho, is very, very important to our health as we age. And it's one of those things that, like a lot of things, like peptides and other things, it declines with age. And as it declines, you see higher rates of things like diabetes, kidney disease, Alzheimer's disease. And one of the things in this mouse study that they found is that lower levels of alpha-klotho shortened the lifespan of the mice, increasing it by giving senolytics increased lifespan by up to 30%. So let's talk a little bit more about senolytics, because I think this is really interesting, and I promise that you're going to hear more and more about these. And some of these aren't even medications. Some you can get as supplements. But there was a study published in the journal Nature Medicine looking at senolytics and old age and lifespan and physical function. And again, we talk a lot about this show is, the key is not just living longer, it's improving our health span. It doesn't do us any good to push our lifespan to 100 or 110, but if we're sick at 60 or crippled or disabled where we're struggling to get up the steps or we have to use a cane everywhere we go, that's just extra decades that you're going to basically be incapacitated. We want a good quality of life during those extra years, the enhanced health span. That's why this is so important to me and to so many people. Now, all of those things, decreased mobility, the age-related chronic diseases, the cognitive diseases, dementias, things like that, the cardiovascular disease, loss of independence, being admitted to the hospital, to nursing homes, and yet dying. Those are all things that we're trying to target, and one of the ways we're looking at it is cellular senescence and senolytics. And just like I talked about, we've started to figure out these senescent cells seem to be big factors in the aging process, but how much of a factor is what we didn't know. And this study really kind of gets at that. Basically, they took these senescent cells, in older mice, and they just took a few of them. And these were cells that have been damaged by, with DNA damage. Their telomeres are shorter, the caps on the DNA, mitochondrial dysfunction, inflammation. And again, those senescent cells, when they build up, cause all kinds of age-related diseases, chronic diseases. And so what they did in this study is they took some older mice and got some senescent cells from the mice, these damaged cells, but they hadn't gone off to die. They got these cells from the mice, and then they took younger mice and injected a fair number of these senescent cells into the younger mice. Guess what happened? Those younger mice got old in a hurry. They got the age-related diseases. They showed all the biologic changes associated with aging. They were young in age, but they got very old by having senescent cells put into them. Then they gave just a very small amount of senescent cells to older mice, and they went down the tubes in a hurry. So you don't even need as many senescent cells as you get older to cause some of the same damage. Now, that shows you right there how bad or how much of a role senescent cells play in shortening our lifespan, shortening our health span. But then what they did is they took 2 senolytic drugs. Basically, they eliminate senescent cells and decrease the number of senescent cells. They did dasatinib and quercetin. Dasatinib's a medication. Quercetin is a supplement that you can get in a lot of places, and it's in a lot of combination supplements. And what they found out is that reversed those problems. And again, these were orally administered to these younger mice and the older mice. It alleviated their physical dysfunction, had them survive 36% longer, reduced their risk of mortality 65%. So what they showed is these senolytic cells lead to aging, lead to the physical dysfunction and the age-related diseases, but these senolytic drugs seem to be able to reverse this. And you're going to hear a whole lot about this in the coming months and years. Senolytic supplements, senolytic drugs to try to help us avoid some of these age-related diseases. There's a lot of research that needs to go on. We need human research, all sorts of stuff, but I think this is one of the more exciting areas. I mean, in addition to a lot of things, NAD and mitochondrial dysfunction, and there's a lot of things we're figuring out about the aging process, but the senescent cells and the senolytic drugs are going to be big. I really believe this. This is not medical advice. Go talk to your doctor about it, especially somebody that knows functional and integrative medicine and anti-aging and regenerative medicine, but I'm fairly excited about this. All right. Andrea says, I rarely drink coffee, drink kombucha. I have never really been a big kombucha person, but I know a lot of people, a lot of my friends have gone through phases where they did that. Zombie cells, how to get rid of them, stay young, reduce cellular inflammation. Yeah, the inflammation is one of those big things that, and I talk about it a lot on this show. If there's one thing you want to fix and improve your health the quickest, inflammation is probably the biggest part of it. I know people will say being overweight and all that, and that's true, but inflammation largely plays a role in, as we get older, keeping on fat, losing muscle, and not burning as many calories, and we just get bigger and bigger. But inflammation is related to cognitive decline and formation of dementias and Alzheimer's. It's involved in cardiovascular disease, nerve degeneration, and so much tissue dysfunction, insulin resistance, that finding, eating an anti-inflammatory diet, getting rid of chronic stress, anti-inflammatory supplements can be helpful. There's a lot of things. And obviously, in what I care about, where inflammation is a really big deal, is in arthritis. So I am very, very passionate about that. All right, if you know people that that like this type of thing, like health and wellness and that kind of thing, make sure to subscribe to my channel, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Make sure on YouTube, click the bell to be notified when I start a live stream or release a new video. But if you like information that helps you feel and perform your best regardless of age, injury, or medical history, I am here to help. And if you have an orthopedic question, an orthopedic injury, muscle, tendon, ligament, cartilage, arthritis, whatever it is, and you'd want to see somebody that isn't going to just talk about surgery and cortisone shots or maybe physical therapy, but you want to hear about all kinds of options, I am happy to see you. There's information to my website, drdavidgeier.com. You can go to the contact page and request an appointment to see me. I see people in Charleston, South Carolina mainly, but occasionally Charlotte, North Carolina. So I am more than happy to do that. And then Benjo, I see your question. I don't do health or orthopedic questions on these shows, but if you join me Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern time for Ask Dr. Geier Live, that's all I do for that entire show, is answer questions about bone and joint injuries, things like that. Remember to subscribe to Better Than Ever Live, the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, anywhere that has podcasts, you'll find that. If you can't be here live, you can listen to it at the gym or going to work or coming home from work. Very, very appreciative that you joined us. Very excited. I will see all of you in 2 days. Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to talk about whether running actually makes knee arthritis worse. Everybody says it does, but everybody meaning orthopedic surgeons, but does it actually make your knee arthritis worse? This matters because a lot of runners get arthritis. A lot of runners want to keep running, so that is something to talk about. So, sorry, I was closing the show, but I love Mary's question. Would drinking green tea and eating foods act as senolytics? The green tea, epigallocatechans, are actually thought to have senolytic properties. In addition to being very anti-inflammatory and being antiviral, and in theory people say they're anti-cancer if you have cancer. So yes, they work as senolytics. There's a number of things that are being looked at as senolytic drugs as well. Things that are anti-aging for other purposes, potentially like rapamycin and metformin. But I talked about quercetin. There's a number of medications being looked at, a number of peptides being looked at as potentially senolytic. But as far as supplements go, quercetin is one, epigallocatechans and green tea would be another one. If you just Andrew, if you just go to the contact page, that basically gets to me and my assistant, and we'll take care of it there. Thank you so much for watching. Really, really excited you joined us. I will see you on Thursday talking about running. Take care.